Mostly it was disbelief, like this couldn't possibly have been. Surely it was a firecracker.
We just saw him, Trump, duck behind the podium.
He was covered by his Secret Service people, all right? And then he got up and he gave, the okay.
There's no place in America for this kind of violence.
Breaking news at 11 o'clock. Gunfire, former President Trump's campaign rally in Butler County. Investigators calling it a possible assassination attempt. The shooter killed.
The former president says that he was hit in his ear. Blood was seen coming down his face as Secret Service agents rushed him to safety. Crowds were sent running for safety. One spectator was killed. 2 other spectators were critically injured. And we do want to thank you if you are just joining us or you're staying with us tonight. Chaos and tragedy unfolding in our backyard in Butler County.
And tonight, former President Trump says he is fine and thanking the Secret Service and law enforcement for their quick actions today. Now, Sky 4 over the aftermath of tonight's rally, a political event turned crime scene. All this just 2 days before the opening of the Republican National Convention, which tonight we understand is still on.
So we want to reset here and start by bringing everybody up to speed. Pittsburgh's Action News 4 anchor Chandy Chapman is here with us. Chandy, you were just a few minutes away from starting the 6:30 broadcast tonight when this happened.
That's right. We were about to start that 6:30 newscast when we heard what officials have now confirmed as gunfire on the news feed. We saw former President Donald Trump drop down from the podium with Secret Service surrounding him. This was pivotal rally tonight. It's leading into the GOP convention in Milwaukee. Trump started speaking a little after 6 tonight, right before this all unfolded. Hundreds of supporters were at the Butler County Farm Show grounds when a popping sound was heard that we now know was gunfire.
What happened?
Now you just saw and you heard the chaos that was happening. You can see the former president quickly grab his ear when the first gunshots were heard. Seconds later, he goes down to the ground and is quickly covered by the Secret Service. More seconds later, we would hear that the suspected shooter was down.
We're good. Shooter's down. Are we good to move?
Now, again, you could just hear that someone possibly with Secret Service said on that hot microphone, the shooter is down shortly before the former president is helped from the stage. Now, we want you to take a look at this. We have blurred this video captured by a witness at the rally of what appears to be the body on a nearby rooftop.
We can see the guy there. I think they hit him because the guy he looks dead.
Now, again, we have blurred this video, but a witness at the rally says the man down on the roof looks dead. And we've confirmed the shooter was on an elevated area and was shot and killed by law enforcement. Now, we're learning the shooter fired as many as 8 rounds from an AR-style rifle while perched on a rooftop adjacent to the venue. That's according to law enforcement sources. The shooter was also 200 to 300 yards away from the time of the gunfire. Now, Trump posting this statement on Truth Social. I want to thank the United States Secret Service and all of law enforcement for the rapid response on the shooting that just took place in Butler, Pennsylvania. Most importantly, I want to extend my condolences to the family of the person at the rally who was killed and also to the family of another person that was badly injured. It is incredible that such an act can take place in our country. Nothing is known at this time about the shooter, who is now dead. I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong and that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin. Much bleeding took place, so I realized then what was happening. God bless America. Now, the FBI has now leading this investigation in this case, and minutes later, President Biden addressed the nation.
There's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this.
Now, we're told Trump is doing fine tonight, and his campaign said he's looking ahead to the GOP convention, which starts on Monday, and we've learned there are no plans to actually push that convention back.
All right, thanks for bringing us up to speed, Chandy. It was obviously a very traumatic day for people who simply thought they were going to an ordinary rally for Donald Trump.
Pittsburgh's Action News 4 reporter Carlos Flores joins us live from Butler with what witnesses have to say tonight. Carlos.
Yeah, good evening to you both. The situation really unfolded so quickly as thousands of people made their way out of the venue following those shots being fired. But let's take you to that moment where you can see the former President Donald Trump being taken to the ground by Secret Service after those shots were being fired. We know there were some shots fired from the roof of a building behind the former president from snipers positioned for security. Now we know Secret Service took down the suspected shooter. Now, shortly after those shots were fired, the former president was rushed out by Secret Service, but not until he put a fist up in the air, signaling to his supporters that he is okay. Now, Mayor John David Longo with Slippery Rock was one of today's speakers and worked to take someone to seek medical attention following the incident. He shared where he was in that moment.
Front row, stage left, sit to the right side of the president, as close as you could get to the stage from the barrier. And I heard that first crack, and part of me, started looking around, but mostly it was disbelief. Like, this couldn't possibly have been. Surely it was a firecracker or something. It's a gag. The second round I heard what I thought was a 22 or something that was like it. So I just shoved my wife down to the ground and put myself over, and I asked her. She's a state police officer. I said, "Do you think that sounded like a 22?" And she said, "Yes, I do." And so we kind of decided in that moment that's what was happening. So we yelled at everybody around us, of course, to get down and keep their heads as close to the ground as possible.
Now, Longo, like many others, were just in shock. We spoke with a couple of supporters who were 20 feet away from the incident.
And right behind me, because I was amazingly close to the man that was hit in the stands, and they were bringing him down, and there was a lot of blood. And then I said to my brother, I started thinking, is this the shooter? And then he turned around and committed suicide, blew his brains out. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I'm in shock, and of course we're Trump fans, so we're just thank God that he was not killed.
Now, this is still very much a developing situation, but many people here have a sense of shock and disbelief that there was a possible assassination attempt on the former president. But of course, we'll be continuing following this here and online. But for now, reporting from Butler County, Carlos Flores, Pittsburgh's Action News 4.
All right, Carlos, thank you very much. Meantime, the aftermath of the shooting was just horrific.
We do want to warn you that this next video is graphic. Viewer Corey Weaver captured this footage of a chaotic scene on the bleachers. It shows some of the wounded, at least one man who is completely down, not moving. You can see some of the wounded here being helped down to safety. Many others in the video, understandably, appearing just shocked to see this.
As we've been saying all evening, officials say one person in the crowd was killed today and two others were critically injured.
Pittsburgh's Action News 4 reporter Kaylee Gunderson is joining us now, where she has been stationed with another man who was near some of those victims. Kaylee, what did he have to say?
Well, Kelly, Andrew, he has quite the recap of what he experienced tonight. It was a shock for him to witness. I do want to note first, we finally know from Allegheny Health Network that two people who were critically injured were brought here to this hospital. We were initially hearing some reports that Trump was as well, finally confirming just those two people critically hurt are inside tonight. Now, this man, he was there. He witnessed the shooting happen. He said once he realized what happened, he rushed towards the stage. just kind of out of instinct to try to see if he could capture some footage of what happened. Take a look at this video. You can see people being carried down the risers by police officers. It's a chaotic scene. People are, of course, very scared in that moment. That was just moments after the gunfire had rang out. Josh Drespling says he was there tonight, actually not considering himself there as a Trump supporter, but there because he just wanted to hear the former president speak, and he wanted to learn more, about what he had to say tonight. Listen to what he said.
It was kind of surreal. Like, is this really happening? At first, like I said, thought it was fireworks and someone goofing around, and then I was like, this is going to just be stupid. But then once the realization hit that what was happening, and I saw Trump go down and the Secret Service basically cover him up and everything, it got very surreal. And then there was kind of a moment of quiet. And it wasn't like people mass chaos trying to exit or anything. Everybody just kind of sat there with their mouth open, like, I can't believe this is happening. There was just that moment of unbelievability, across the crowd.
Yeah, he described that moment of silence there a little bit further in our interview, just saying that people were stunned. I mean, they just were taking in what had just happened. And so despite the chaos, there was that moment of calm just while people grappled with what they just witnessed. Now, the scene here at Allegheny General Hospital is clear tonight. There are not police still on scene. They've all left. But again, 2 people critically injured being treated inside. For now, reporting live on the North Shore, Kaylee Gunderson, Pittsburgh's Action News 4.
Thank you for getting that sorted for us, Kaylee. And this happened at about 6:15. It's now almost 11:15. So this was only about 5 hours ago. Obviously still a very active investigation at this point.
That's right. And Pittsburgh's Action News 4 reporter Yasmin Rodriguez joins us live with a police presence still near the rally site this evening. Yasmin.
Andrew, Kelly, yeah, we're still on the scene of the 100 block of Lawrence Avenue, where police are appearing to search what appears to be a suspicious van. Now, neighbors I spoke to say this van has been here since 1:30 with out-of-state license plates. Now, this location is only about maybe a mile away from that rally site today. Police did tell neighbors in the immediate area to stay inside and that the bomb squad is on the way. But we do want to take you back to the scene outside of Butler Memorial Hospital, where everyone was waiting to see if the former president was there and being treated.
I put it all together. Closest hospital to take him to would be Butler. It'd be too far to rush him to Pittsburgh for his condition, not knowing his condition.
A couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that's
Not only was there a heavy police presence at the hospital, but there was also a good number of supporters out there as well. Now, we did speak to some people who were waiting across the street from the hospital on any word about the former president as soon as they heard what happened. Many of them not even at today's rally, but made the trip to the hospital once they learned that news. The hospital entrance was blocked off for hours, and we also did notice multiple snipers near the top of the building. Route 68 was also closed for an extended period of time. That has all since cleared out. One man we spoke to told us why he was at that hospital tonight.
Watching the rally, saw what happened, and we need to stop this. For seeing a person get shot or his life attempted assassination, it wakes you up.
Now, that scene at Butler Memorial Hospital cleared out about around 8:30. If you are just joining us, around the 100 block of Lawrence Avenue, where police are searching what appears to be a suspicious van. Again, neighbors telling me that that van has been here since about 1:30 with out-of-state license plates. It's unknown if that van is connected to what happened at today's rally, but the location is about a mile apart from each other. We are waiting on the bomb squad to arrive, so we will update you as we learn more. Reporting from Butler, Yasmin Rodriguez, Pittsburgh's Action News 4.
All right, yeah, of course, if that turns out to be something, we will keep you posted. All right, and Chandy is back with us now. Chandy, you've been following the reaction that's coming in from all over the world from this tonight.
Yes, Andrew and Kelly, so many messages have been posted on social media. Here's one from Governor Josh Shapiro with an updated message tonight. Under the protection of U.S. Secret Service and with the assistance of the Pennsylvania State Police, former President Trump has now left the Butler area. Lori and I are thankful that his team reports that he is fine, and we continue to wish him a full and speedy recovery. We mourn the loss of life and pray for the 2 victims who are being treated at this time. I am grateful for all law enforcement who responded, protected the former president, and worked to bring the situation under control. Federal law enforcement officials will continue to lead on the investigation into the shooting of former President Trump. Pennsylvania State Police will lead the investigation into the shooting of the other victims. Now, I have been in regular communication with law enforcement on the ground in Pennsylvania and have spoken with President Biden, who offered his full support. As we wait to learn more from the investigations, I am mindful of just how painful and shocking this event is to so many of our fellow Pennsylvanians. I respectfully ask that we treat our fellow Americans with respect and join together to universally condemn the unacceptable violence we witnessed earlier today in Butler. Again, that is an updated statement just coming in. And just in from Republican Chairman Sam DeMarco, the incident in Butler County has made a few things clear. First, Donald Trump is a fighter who left the stage reluctantly and will come back stronger and even more prepared to fight to make America great. It is also a haunting reminder of how extreme rhetoric and political hatred can rob a nation of its civility and shared purpose. This will remind Mr. Trump's haters that words matter. This is from Senator Bob Casey. We must never accept political violence. The former president, his family, and all attendees at the rally in Butler tonight are in my thoughts, and I am hoping for their health and safety. This statement is from Senator Kim Ward. The resilience of America must overcome any gutless acts of violence, praying for President Trump, his family, and any innocent victims and their families who may have been harmed by this senseless act. Thank you to the Secret Service, law enforcement, and emergency responders who assisted in keeping things safe and calm. God bless America.
All right, well, President Joe Biden held a news conference after the shooting.
Reporter Kayla Norwood joining us live now with the White House message tonight.
Yeah, Kelly and Andrew, a White House official says President Biden has now spoken with former President Trump following that shooting, though not revealing the details of their conversation. Before leaving Delaware, President Biden saying there is no place in America for this kind of violence.
It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country.
President Joe Biden giving an emergency briefing from Delaware after a suspected assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump Saturday night. Biden said he's relieved to hear Trump's doing well and thanks Secret Service for getting the former president to safety. The head of Secret Service and Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas briefed the president shortly after the shooting at his political opponent and presumptive Republican nominee's rally.
The idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. And everybody must condemn it. Everybody.
The White House says that President Biden will receive an updated briefing from Homeland Security and law enforcement officials in the morning. Reporting live from the White House, Kaylin Norwood, Pittsburgh's Action News 4.
Okay, Kaylin, thank you. Now we want to go out live to Pittsburgh's Action News 4 reporter Bob Mayo.
He is with Congressman Mike Kelly tonight. Bob.
That's right. Congressman Kelly is here with us, and you were at this event. You were watching, listening to the president. Yes. Be eyes and ears for us as those shots were fired. What you heard, what you saw, what happened in front of you.
Yeah, we know. So the president usually makes when he comes on to the catwalk, then he goes up onto the stage, and he's always. I mean, just people were clamoring USA, USA, and we love you, Trump, and all this stuff. And then he goes into his speech. So he's going through a speech. I'm about 50, 60 feet away from him. I'm not looking up at where he is. He's talking, and he talks something about, I don't know why people are so afraid of MAGA, making America great again, shouldn't scare anybody. And then all of a sudden there's pop, 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 pop. And I said, oh my God, he's been shot. And then I hear screaming behind me, and I turn around and look up in the bleachers about 10 rows up from where I'm standing. There's people crying, and they're saying, he's hurt, he's hurt. And they turn around, and they have blood over the front of them. And I'm watching the security guys blanket the president while he's on the stage. Another group is rushing up to help this person who's been shot. they're carrying President Trump down off the stage. And of course, he raises his hand, I'm okay, I'm okay. And I'm watching then, because then all of a sudden the security people say, everybody down, everybody down, everybody down. And so we're all down and we're waiting to see what's going to happen next. A few minutes later, they say, okay, fine, exit, get out now. It was bothersome to me because, first of all, you don't expect to see anything that in your life. My wife is there with our grandchildren. My brother's there with his children. And I'm thinking, where's the kids? Where's my wife? Where are the kids? Are they okay? I couldn't catch up with them. I couldn't find them. So we start to exit. I was with Mrs. Fogel, Mark Fogel's mother, because she was going to have a chance to talk to the president. She had her son out of prison in Russia. But it was just so surreal. It was like, that this can't possibly be happening in Butler, Pennsylvania, on the Butler Farm Show grounds. This is where the 4-H kids show their animals. This is where they have baking contests. This is everything that's great about America. This can't be happening here. You realize it is happening here. It's happening in real time. When I finally caught up with my family, one of the things I think that really bothered me, my wife, of course, was very upset about it. She didn't believe that could happen. But the children were like, Grandpa, why would somebody want to kill President Trump? I said, I can't tell you that. The level of hate in this country has gotten too crazy. Look, you don't like whoever the candidate is, just don't vote for them. There's something wrong, Bob. There's something wrong. We have gotten so far away from who we are as a country. When you take God out of your culture, I think you end up with things like this happening. This is so horrific that we can't imagine. This is not the America that my parents grew up in. This isn't the America that 1.5 million men and women in uniform died to protect. This has become truly a third world country where these kind of things happen. You say, that would never happen in America. Yeah, it's happening right now.
In that moment when people realized what happened, they saw the president, they saw the blood on some people in the crowd. What was the behavior of the crowd as everyone was trying to move, was concerned for their loved ones as you were yourself? What was that atmosphere on the ground?
Well, it was kind of surreal because people were crying. Other people were saying, I can't find, where is everybody? And then the security people were saying, get out, please, move. It was like, I can't believe this is happening in real time in my town. This doesn't happen here.
You had mentioned Mrs. Fogel, the mother of Mark Fogel. I had just spoken with her a couple of days ago, a woman in her 90s who's speaking out about her son in this, even before this happened, under the heat of that day when this happened. Did you get a chance to speak with her? What was the impact on her if you had a chance to observe?
Well, she's 95 now. We were sitting beside each other. Other people were there with us, and I said to her, Miss Fogel, you okay? She says, Mike, I'm fine. And she's 95. She's very frail. I said, come on, we'll help you. Christine Toretti was there. There were people around there to help Mrs. Fogel. But it comes down to this point is we've got to start looking out for each other. We've got to help those who aren't able to do the things that we're able to do, and thank God we're blessed to be able to do that. It just gets me in your head right now. It's like, what happened to the America? What happened to the America that my parents went off to war to fight for, going through the Great Depression? Something has changed in America, and we have to get it back. So I told people, tomorrow morning, Sunday, please, get to wherever it is you worship, get on your knees and thank God that we're in America, and also accept the responsibility that if we're going to change America and get America back to who we think she should be, it's up to us. There's nobody else coming in. It's up to us. We just have to do it.
We're hearing that the former president was not seriously hurt. There are indications the Republican convention will go forward. I know you were going to have some sort of presence there. Your thoughts about the political process moving forward, the convention, the actual campaigning. Where does the process go in these days and weeks ahead?
I think we have to stop and catch our breath. We have to realize who came before us and why we were always considered the greatest country in the world, and why people are flooding to the states. They want to be part of something that they couldn't be part of wherever it is that they live or where they come from. We have a responsibility as individual citizens. Look, this hate speech has got to stop. It's got to be, we've got to stop all this. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent. I don't care. You're an American. In America, you have the right to go register and then vote for the candidate of your choice. You don't have the right to assassinate a candidate because you don't like him or her. This is an assassination attempt on a candidate for the presidency of the United States, the 45th president of the United States, meeting at a farm showground with thousands and thousands of people. This is what America is. That is the basics of who America is. This happened today. That's not who we are. Unfortunately, we are looking more like that third world country that we've never wanted to be, and we're starting to look that way. It's time for us to turn the ship around and get back to who we really are.
Congressman Mike Kelly, thank you for sharing your time with us. We appreciate it. We're reporting live from Butler County, speaking with Congressman Mike Kelly, who was there at the Trump rally event when those shots were fired, sharing his firsthand observations, sharing his reflections on what happened today. Reporting live in Butler County, Bob Mayo, Pittsburgh's Action News 4. Back to you.
Good to hear from him. All right, Bob, thank you. And we did just get word that a press conference has now been scheduled for 11:45 at the Butler Township Police Department. That's about 20 minutes from now. State police will be there, as well as members of the FBI and the Secret Service. And Pittsburgh's Action News 4 will bring that to you live.
Right now, we're joined by Chris Bono, a professor of political science at the University of Pittsburgh, who's been giving us historical perspective about what has taken place today. And this is a difficult question, Professor Bono, but first of all, thank you for being with us. Looking to the future, if you would, how will we remember what took place today?
Well, it's a historic day. It's the first assassination attempt of a president in 40 years. Over 40 years. And, you know, we can think back to the attempt on Ronald Reagan's life, the attempt on Gerald Ford's life, obviously the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, and going back to other presidents who have been assassinated. I mean, this is a rare event, and it's something that, will absolutely be remembered.
And, you know, we were just hearing Mike Kelly there talking about, extreme rhetoric that flies around when it comes to American politics these days. How much do you think that played a role in what happened today?
Well, it's hard to quantify exactly, but, you know, when you have a dry forest and you light a match, it's going to blow up. And I think we've seen over the past couple decades an increase in the kind of rhetoric, the demonization of one's opponents that have caused, but that have led to events such as today, or the shootings of Congresswoman Gabby Giffords and Congressman Steve Scalise. And so this is something that didn't just happen overnight. It's been going on for years.